All right. So this morning we're going to start off with Chase Golf. I know that many of you all know Chase. I mean, wow, he is just such a dynamic person, and we are just so happy to have him here at Greg. And he is leading our CRISA team, and that team has a lot of opportunities available for you, your schools, your districts. And I just wanted him to have a little time this morning to tell you how his team can support you. So Chase, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Kelly. That was generous, and I just I'm glad to be here this morning. I put this in the chat, but it's true. You can't say this too loud, but principals are definitely my favorite group of people. So I'm grateful to be here this morning and be able to talk to you a little bit about CRISA and the work that we've been commissioned to do. So CRISA really came about, I guess it was back in January, February. We knew, well, we didn't. Obviously, there was districts that and schools that were going to have to experience some sort of recovery from the pandemic. And so when the ESSER funds came down, the 8 co-ops across the state got together and said, let's ask KDE to be able to form a team to support school districts in recovery efforts after the pandemic. And so the 8 co-ops wrote a grant, and then that once KDE approved that grant, they were able to hire this team of 5 people at each of the co-ops to serve as the CRISA team. Now, CRISA originally stood for Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplementary Appropriations Act. It got so long that we cut off an A. And there was, obviously talking about the coronavirus and COVID is not something that we want to spend an abundance of time doing. And so we kind of rethought, what are we actually trying to do? We knew it needed to be collaborative. It was a response, and we believe wholeheartedly that now is the time to be able to reimagine what school looks like for our students across the region and across the state of Kentucky. If there has ever been an external force to move that needle, that now is that time. And so Greg was blessed to be able to hire a team, and this team is a great group of people. And so Sherlyn Bratcher, who you'll hear from in just a second, she's on this Google or this Zoom call, I believe. She is one of our SEL specialists. So she's a former high school counselor, and her focus is really on SEL and how we can best equip students, staff, faculty to engage in that conversation. We also hired Kaylee Crowder. Kaylee is the next one there on the screen. And Kaylee is she was a math teacher in Russellville Independent and a STEM coach down there. And so Kaylee is a learning acceleration specialist specifically focused in math. She does incredible work. She was a teacher for many, many years, and she was a STEM coach and a math instructional coach. We're excited to have her on board as well. Marisa Duarte is the next one there. She's also an SEL specialist, but her focus on the CRISA team is not just SEL, but what does that look like for students with disabilities, and how do we best empower them to transition at these crucial points in time. And so we know that giving students purpose is perhaps the best SEL tool that we have, and that's where she spends a lot of her time trying to think about that. Audrey Harper is our learning acceleration specialist for literacy. Audrey she's very diverse background. She's a high school English teacher, middle school instructional coach, or maybe that was backwards. I'm not. She spent time at secondary level in literacy. Then she worked for the Kentucky Department of Education for a while. Most recently, she was at the Warren County School Board, serving as the point of contact for their Striving Readers grant. I don't know if anybody on this call is part of a district that just received a Striving Readers grant, but she has extensive experience in that. And then something else that Greg decided to do was hire Caitlin Tuska, who's the bottom right there on your screen. And Kate is our MTSS consultant. So we know that MTSS, we love acronyms in K-12 education, and MTSS is another one that we have. But I do believe that MTSS is an opportunity to really streamline and simplify a lot of the things that go on in the course of a school, in the course of any school. And she's a consultant that was brought on here at GREC, and she's attached to our CRISA team to really help us think systematically about how we do this. So CRISA, we have a great team. I'm Chase. My background was I was a high school teacher, special education teacher at Warren Central High School in Bowling Green. And then I was principal at Caverna High School for a few years. I saw Greg Cecil, I think, on this call. He was my counterpart at Hart County, and got to work with him. And then for the past 3 years before I came to Greg, I had served as essentially the chief academic officer in Nelson County, and got to work and coach with principals. And that's why I say they're absolutely my favorite group of people to work with. So that's a little bit of my background. And so really our conversation began with CRISA. How do we make this work meaningful to schools, well, to students, but also to teachers, to schools, to districts that we serve? The last thing that a principal needs is someone else to tell them what to do. And that is not our goal. Our goal is to be able to support you and your school in whatever that looks like, recovering from the pandemic. We know that it's been blown up, and we want to support that. And I have been very clear, and I continue to be very clear, that our work is a 3-year process. So CRISA is not an ongoing thing. We're not going to be at GREC forever. We're going to be here for 3 years. We've got 3 years to build capacity and build systems so that when our work is done as a CRISA team, there's enduring parts of that work that continue on. And so that's our goal. That's our mission. Our mission is not to be long-term. Our mission is not to do the work for districts. Our mission is not to tell districts and schools what they need to do. Our goal is to build capacity, to build structures, to build systems, and to support schools and districts in doing the work that they need to do. So where we began that conversation was talking to superintendents and principals. And if you go to the next slide, I want to kind of summarize those conversations. And I want you guys, as I read these and talk about these, to think about which ones resonate most with you. So if you had to pick one of these things, which one of these resonate most with you? So when we talk to superintendents, our team divided up the region. We've got 45 districts in GREC, so there's obviously a lot of folks, but these are kind of 8 common themes that emerged from our superintendents, and the points of contact that they had denoted in the district. So number one, they're not even sure where to begin with SEL. It's an overwhelming need. Students have a lot of SEL needs. We're not even sure really where to start that conversation, because it in the past, our counselor or maybe somebody at our school level had been able to do a lot of that. Now it seems like we got a lot more students. Somebody referenced the TikTok challenge. I mean, that's a perfect example, right? We've got kids that have seen videos of a challenge of trying to destroy school property, and now they do it for the sake of, being on a TikTok video. So that's an example of some of these weird things that come up. Second thing that they talked about was our adults needing SEL. Like our students are absolutely stressed, but so are our adults. I talked to a principal a week or two ago, and he told me it was this school year has been the hardest school year. I think he's on year 23. It's been the hardest school year he's ever had, and he's like, I'm only a month into it. So we know our adults are stressed as well, and superintendents echoed that. Superintendent said, we got a lot of data. All right, we've been able to assess and test kids to death, not just academically, although we have that. Many districts have started creating SEL data metrics and looking at, transitions of kids, and there's data everywhere, right? But we're not really sure what to do or how to organize all of that data. Another one was significant learning loss in specific areas. Now, we're trying to stay away from this idea of learning loss because we know that kids also learned a lot of things, right? Being at home, they learned a lot of skills, a lot of resiliency, a lot of grit that they may not otherwise have had. But we know that if we look specifically at science, or we look specifically at math, we know that there are significant gaps that were already there, but have just gotten wider. Superintendent's talked a lot about option 6 and emergency certified teachers, and this idea that, and I think principals, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, but that, when you hire a new teacher, there's already an induction process that has to occur, and there's a coaching process that you have to have. But when that teacher has no background in teaching and learning, they're from, an industry sector, or they're from some other place, that's a whole other animal. It's a whole different conversation. We had one district that hired 120 teachers this school year, because they're a bigger district, but hired 120 teachers, and over half of them were option 6 or emergency certified. So we know that specific group of people or something that um, is an issue that we have to look at. In addition to that, there's just major teacher shortages. I was with the superintendent on Monday. He said that for the first time in his career, he's having trouble filling in. He has 0 applicants for an elementary school teaching position. So in addition to having to hire option 6 and emergency certified, we've got lots of classrooms that just don't have anybody in it. I read a story yesterday. It was a Spanish teacher, I believe, in a district. I don't remember which one. But they had finally found a Spanish teacher after 2 years of searching for a Spanish teacher. So we know that there's major teacher shortages across the board. A lot of new coaches. A lot of people spent ESSER funds on instructional coaches, or even curriculum coordinators, or whatever you might call that. We've added people that are supposed to assist with instruction, maybe interventionists as well. But they need some support, right? They either come from the classroom, or they've been doing some kind of role, and now they're put into a coaching role. And we know that's a different step. All of you guys have experienced that. You were teachers that went into a coaching role, be it a principal, assistant principal, whatever that might look like, and they need some support. And then we had several that were really honest, and I'm really grateful that they were honest and said, listen, we love Greg. We think the work that you guys are going to do is really powerful. But right now, literally the only thing that I can think about is quarantine and getting kids and parents from point A to point B and making sure kids stay in school. That's it. I can't think about anything else. I don't have the capacity to think about anything else. And I get that as well. So what I wanted you guys to do for a second is, if you look at these, if we were to imagine a number here, so so if we started at the top, reading left to right, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and the bottom is 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're looking at that screen, I want to ask 2 questions. The first one is, what do you feel like from this list were perhaps the most was an issue that existed pretty profoundly prior to COVID-19? So if we go back almost 18 months now, March the 12th, 2020, we go back that far, and we say this was really a major issue for us in our school or across the region or state, even before COVID ever happened. What is one that you would say? So you can just type the number in the chat there, and then we can talk about it. Yeah, I'm seeing 3s. Jeannie, so if you're looking at the screen there, the top one would be, the top row there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, reading left to right, and then the bottom would be 5, 6, 7, 8. So I see several 3s. I think one of the conversations that we talked about yesterday here at Greg, and I think you could probably echo this, I know I could, is one of the problems with data. Well, I would say there's two problems with data. One, it's highly skewed. We know that data has a lot of flaws the way that we currently gather it. How many of you guys have been guilty, and I'll raise my hand because I was guilty as well, of trying to make the data fit the narrative that I needed to fit as a principal, because I had these external forces, whether it's parents or the community or superintendent or whoever, that wanted to make sure that our behavior data looked right in Infinite Campus, or our assessment data was fine at the end of the year, right? So it's skewed. But I think there's also this issue of, I guess maybe unless you were a school psychiatrist, I'm not sure anybody has been trained to really use data very much. I know I hadn't. I had zero understanding or awareness of data. And then I also saw, let's see, I saw 1, 6. I think teacher shortages. That's definitely something that was coming for sure. Looks like Philip said 1. SEL. Yeah, I think SEL's always been a problem. We just maybe didn't have to deal with it as much, or didn't have to think about it as much because it wasn't right there in our purview. Yeah, for sure. Anybody want to? We got a little bit of time here. Anybody want to hop in, and kind of clarify their thoughts, what you were thinking with that question? I like for things to be a lot more interactive.
Yeah, Chase, I'll chime in.
I knew
A
you
lot.
would.
You know that, Chase. Um, for us, it's teacher shortages are a problem. Emergency certifications, option sixes. I have quite a few of both, but it's also support staff that puts a lot of pressure on everybody, between bus drivers, custodial positions, aid positions. Trying to fill positions has been a nightmare this year. One of the worst years I've ever seen. We've all seen the writing on the wall, knowing it's coming. I was hoping it would stay away until I got a few more years in and could, take care of that problem myself. But that's putting a lot of pressure on everything else in order to, and it puts it puts pressure on our teachers. We're covering classes left and right because of sub shortages, and it weighs on everybody's social and emotional, between the kids, teachers, everybody. So that's one of our major struggles at this point.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's nothing worse than having the best laid plans, and I think that's maybe what's made this year worse. It seems like is back in June and July, we felt like we'd kind of rounded the corner, and there was going to be some sense of return to normalcy or whatever that looked like, and then we had the best laid plans, and then it just kind of reared its ugly head again. And then, when you're a teacher and you've got plans for the day, whether you do something during planning, or you're going to have your, kindergarten assistant do this thing or that thing. And then you got these major shortage issues, or your district. And I don't know if there's been any around here, but I know several that across the state that couldn't get kids to school because they didn't have bus drivers. And so, we can have the greatest lesson plans in the world, but if we can't get them to school, then, that doesn't matter. So, yeah, that's a great point, Greg. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any thoughts out there?
I don't know if I saw many others put a 2 on there, but I did it just because it's a really difficult time for teachers. And there's a lot of groups and comments being made on social media, if you've seen that as well. Like I saw something yesterday saying that expecting teachers to have lesson plans done on Monday was expecting them free labor over the weekends. And then you see some bickering back and forth, and just kind of some of that stuff that you don't want them to get sucked into, but it's there all the time on social media, and it really kind of has an impact on them, and the culture of the building when they're in here as well, because we pay a lot of attention to a culture and try to do things to build that up. But then it seems like it's just real easy to lose a lot of ground on that because it's such a difficult time for them to do what they do.
Yeah, 100%. I think teachers, and maybe it's not even just teachers. I think people in schools were, probably since that famous legislative session 4 or 5 years ago, it's been a hot button issue, and then obviously COVID has just exacerbated that to levels that we haven't seen. And I think yeah, I think that's true. So my second question that I had on this that I'd be interested in hearing, and Greg alluded a little bit to it, is again, this is what superintendents and or your like instructional supervisors within your district, these were some of the common themes that they had said. Are there any other things that you guys were feeling as part of this conversation that maybe is not on air that you feel like is a pretty significant issue right now in your building? So I know Greg expanded that major teacher shortages to just staff shortages, which is, I would say, 100% true. But is there anything else that maybe is not on here that you're thinking in your head is definitely an area of concern for you?
For us, I don't know that we have the teacher shortage because we're a very small district. I mean, we do have some. I've got some option 6 teachers, so that is an issue. But a lot of it is trying to figure out where we adjust the learning gaps with intervention, or we know that we can't go back and reteach everything that's been learned, or we'll never get caught up, or everything that's been lost, or we'll never get caught back up. So we're trying to push forward, but it seems like this year there's a lack of rigor in my school. We're spoon feeding them basically, and have been for a while, because our parents are, if a kid gets a C or a D, that's our fault. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to push the rigor, and then our teachers get slammed for it. They want to spoon feed and get them to A's because that's less, with everything else that we're dealing with on top of COVID, who wants to have grade conversations, when it's just easier to tell them the answer and go on. But that's reflective. I mean, we rarely have any kids fail, but then our scores don't reflect high learning, especially in math. Our math scores are really low, and our math, our students are lacking math, being able to problem solve and struggle through it. And I don't know where that started. I don't know if that's the Common Core, but that's where we're struggling, is just they're getting to the middle school and can't do basic math at all. And so we're trying to reteach lower level math and with our upper level math, and we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that seems to be coming up a lot, that maybe COVID has done is, since forever we've been talking about guaranteed viable curriculum, and I think what COVID has done is, I think it has exposed some gaps in that. I think it's exposed this idea that there are absolutely teachers in some of our schools that have a really strong, guaranteed, viable curriculum, but when we think about systematically, meaning across a whole school or across a whole district, and what that really means to have a rich, rigorous, aligned, authentic, agency-based curriculum, whatever words you want to throw in there, I think it's probably exposed some of the, we've probably not done as much as we need to with that, I guess is my point. And I think math is a great example of that. We've taught math the same way we've always taught math, and it's, we've the good news is everybody's probably in the same similar boat as you if you look at math scores across the state. But I think it forces us to ask the question, like, okay, so what? Which I think is what you're alluding to. Like, okay, we've had these issues that they've existed for a long time. I read something yesterday where they were talking about learning loss in across the disciplines, and it looks like the data is saying that math was had the most significant learning loss, which was the last place that we needed it because we already had so many deficits in that. So I think, for us, for the CRISA team, the conversation is starting of there are 30,000 foot view things that we need to do, right, that directly support this work, right? We need to have a a way to support new instructional coaches. Right? That's part of it. We need to have a way to really work with these option 6 teachers on teacher mindsets and what it means to be a teacher and how we develop that capacity in them to think like that. We need to support schools and districts in SEL work, like all of those things. With adults and SEL, we need to have resources available to you to do that. Those are things that we as a CRISA team know that we need to do, and we're going to start building that, and you'll see that on the next slide. But I think we're also coming to this understanding that for the work to really happen, we have to get into the trenches and say, okay, how do we start having conversations about a curriculum and a system of assessments and interventions, and like really thinking holistically and systematically about this? Because you know, to your point, we complicate a lot of things in schools. You know, you guys have a million inputs on your head. I was telling my team yesterday, you know, as a principal, everybody had priorities at the district level. You know, everybody had priorities, and then all those filtered down to me, and then I had to try to find a way that I had my own priorities, my own things I wanted to do, and then I was trying to filter that down to teachers, and it's a lot of inputs into your system. So I think our goal for the CRISA team is to come alongside of principals, to come alongside of district leaders, to come alongside of instructional leaders within your district, and really support the conversation in how do we work with you to understand where you are and develop capacity within your school or within your district. So this slide right here is really where we are currently. The top few things are some, again, 30,000 foot views that we're trying to, you know, we're going to be providing. So we sent out a registration for a transition to teaching cadre. We sent out some conversations around the SEL site and how we support adults in that conversation. We're getting more information out about some of these things, but what we really want to do as a CRISA team, and why I'm appreciative of talking to you all today, is I know that the idea of coming to something or sitting and getting something, we know that's not the most effective strategy. And so we definitely want to be boots on the ground with schools and districts and helping you think about, do we have a quality curriculum? Do we have a way that we're measuring whether kids are learning or not? You know, how can we support you all in doing that work? So that's my heartbeat. I don't care if you ever say anything about or for or whatever about CRISA. Our goal, my goal, is always to elevate you all. I think the principal is just a powerful position, and so we want to elevate the work that's happening in your school buildings and elevate the work that you're trying to do. And so that's our hope and that's our goal. And if we can be supportive of you in that, again, here's this slide deck, but also contact us. And we would love to sit down and have a conversation about really getting in there. Not a 1 day process, but a 2 to 3 year process where we can really work and support and get in there and do the work with you. So thank you guys for letting me talk today.
Thanks, Chase. Real important conversations. And so please know that you can reach out, you know, to Chase with any concerns to see how that their team might continue to support you. They're going to have a lot of things rolling out. So I'm very excited about that, and you all will be excited as well. And, you know, one thing that, you know, I kept hearing from principals is, you know, just, you know, staff stress, staff SEL, you know, how to incorporate SEL into the classroom effectively. You know, those were the things that I have continued to hear pop up and be requested. So I had reached out to Sherlyn Bratcher, and she's a part, as Chase said, she's a part of the CRISA team. And so I'm just going to turn it over to her for a few minutes, and she's going to share some things that hopefully you can use for yourself, but that you can also use with your staff. So Sherlyn, if you want to share, I will stop sharing my screen. and you can share. Make sure that works for you.
Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Okay. So I am so excited about being here today. I am Sherlyn Bratcher. I was a middle school and a high school counselor, so I have experience with both. I have been learning a lot about elementary, because that's a whole other little ball game with the different things that they do at that level, but a lot of fun things. So there's my contact information. I'm also on the state Kentucky School Counselor Association board. So and I love being able to work on that. One of the things being part of a little bit of being part of the board and being part of CRISA is that we are working on SEL framework for the state of Kentucky. That's going to be something that will take estimating about a year to a year and a half to get that completely finished. And then the next step will be to create SEL standards for the state of Kentucky. So we're a little, when you look at the United States, several states have already created these things. And so this is something that we have been working on as a KSCA board for the last couple of years with Dr. Sweeney. And so we are very pleased that we're moving forward with that. So that's something that will be able, I think, to be very helpful as we move forward with the need in SEL. So one of the things that Chase talked about was that we have created an SEL Supports for School website. And there's a bit.ly that you can go to, but with bit.ly, you have to capitalize everything. So I just did Greg SEL, all caps, just because it's easy. And so when you go on here, the first slide, this button here will allow you, if you have a specific need, or even like share this out with your staff, even family members, if you want, if there's a specific need, because I am working with Friskies to do some family SEL trainings. So if there's anything specific that you're needing for us to include either here on this website or a training, just kind of let us know. And this just leads you to a Google form. Here are 3 of our SEL supports here at Greg. We have more that we are going to add to this slide, but there's plenty of people here at Greg that will be able to assist with SEL. We try to make it as simple as possible, this website, because we want it to be user-friendly and helpful. So when you go to the school leader site, there are a couple of activities that you could do before school. Gather your staff. We went to Todd County last year, and one of the things that they did, and it was during when we were not in session, but they would meet in the gym every morning and kind of do a praise report, and then they would also have a religious leader in their community there to actually pray with the staff. And so that was really nice. And I know, and leave this up to your faculty if they want to participate or not. And then I can't remember which school this was. It might also be Todd, but they had a coffee tea area that they provided for their teachers. So you could do something simple like that. I'm not particularly a coffee person. I'm one of those weird people that people don't understand how I function throughout the day. But a lot of people like coffee. So, you might want to, provide that for your staff. And then we provided some things to do like during your meetings. So whether it's your faculty meetings, your PLCs, whatever meetings that you have, started off with a couple of these activities. And all of these are actual links. So if you don't feel comfortable leading your staff into that process, you could go to the link and it goes to a YouTube video that will walk your staff and you through that process. The COM app, it's free for educators, so you could download it on your phone or your iPad, and again, choose one of those activities, and like a breathing activity or a stretch, and have that to go with your staff before a meeting. The last two are actually things that Chase has done with us here at Grec. The first one is a mind sweep. So at the beginning of a meeting, because, you know, if it's at the end of the day or if it's in the middle of the day, you know, our thought is always, what do I have to do afterwards? What do I need to do after the meeting? What do I need to do for the next class? You know, picking up the kids, picking up, you know, errands around, you know, before I go home. So all of these things. And so the purpose of a mind sweep is that you give a timer, you know, it can be 3 minutes, it can be 5 minutes, whatever the time you want to do. And they just write. They are getting everything out of their head so that they can focus on the meeting that's getting ready to happen. And honestly, this is great, you know, and you can still, like, if something pops in their head, just have them to write it down and let it go. You know, because sometimes if you don't, you get fixated on it. And make sure that you let them know, because, you know, Chase talks about this a lot of times, that, you know, if you're talking about you need some dog food or something, you know, don't go on Walmart and go ahead and purchase it and, you know, get it ready for pickup. That's not the time for that. This is just the time to get everything out of your head so that you can be 100% focused on whatever meeting is getting ready to happen. And then the gratitude, you know, you could end a meeting. He does this in all of our CRISA meetings when we meet. You know, one of the things that we have to do is, you know, if we can share out something that we're grateful for. So it's really nice to kind of share, you know, he does make us, he is very picky about the rules on this one, though. He makes us be very specific. And we can't say that we're grateful for everybody on our team. We have to be very specific and purposeful in our gratitude. So, and it makes it more meaningful, you know. This morning I received a text from somebody here at Grec and that said something about being grateful for me and why. And, you know, and honestly, that kind of like pepped me up this morning. So it's kind of nice to have those kind of things and kind of share those out with everyone. And then just a couple of things that, you know, after school that you could do, you know, dismiss, maybe all meet, do some kind of activity together just to kind of get them ready to exit from the school and get their mindset ready for home, you know, whatever they need to do after school. That way they can really kind of shut that down just a little bit, because educators are the worst about taking it home and working till 8 or 9 o'clock on something. You know, that's just what we do. So that's something. You might even, you know, if you have a track at your school, or, you know, you have some woods or whatever, maybe take a hike, maybe take, you know, say, okay, at 3:30, we're all going to meet and we're going to go, you know, for a walk for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever it might be. And just kind of, you know, talk and walk and just kind of, you know, exercise and be together. That's a great way to kind of get some things. We are going to add some more to these. I didn't want to put, you know, 40 different things on here and then this be the first time you guys see it. So every couple of weeks, so probably by the end of this week, I'm going to go onto this website and add some more things, because I've been jotting down some notes and things that I want to add everywhere. So it's time to kind of update this just a little bit. And then some of the things that you can do just anytime throughout the year, you can have a mindful activity, you know, that you start the day. One of the biggest thing is buy-in. We know that with anything that we try to do as a school initiative, it's buy into that activity. So if the teachers see that you're buying into this, they are going to be more willing to do it. So, you know, do a morning message, you know, over the intercom and have all the students and teachers, you know, do these kind of things. And if you don't feel comfortable, maybe talk to your school counselors or your mental health therapist or your school psychs, whatever you might have at your disposal to help you with this process. And then one thing I did last year at my old school was I just created a simple Google form, and I just asked staff, you know, what are your favorite snacks? What are your favorite drinks, school appropriate? What are your favorite mints? You know, just all of these kind of things. And then throughout the year, before they would get there the next morning, I would put a little bag on their doorknob, and they would come in and they would see it. and, you know, and they would have some like little snacks and goodies, you know, throughout. I especially did it for, you know, like if I heard that a teacher had had a really bad day or if something had happened, you know, I kind of made sure that I had those things and was able to give that out. And, you know, and it was crazy because it could be like a Coke and, you know, a package of M&Ms. And you would have thought, I mean, I would get like bear hugs when I would walk down the hallway. So I think that that's just, you know, it's a small act that you can even get like your, either your PTO to help or your churches or community to help purchase these things. So it's not something that's going to be a huge expense. And even I purchased them and it was like $5-6 for each teacher, you know, throughout the year. So it's not that big of an expense to do. And you might even do, make sure that, you know, kind of like the text that I got, make sure that you hand, you know, like I had a principal a couple of years ago, and throughout the year, he had the most beautiful handwriting for a guy I've ever seen in my life, but he would write these beautiful notes to us and just appreciation. And then he would just have them, you know, sitting on our keyboard when we would come in the next morning. And it was just so nice, you know, and it was personable. So, you know, just kind of do those kind of things because, you know, just saying, you know, great job with, you know, running that meeting or whatever it might be, that's not as meaningful to some people as really going in detail of what they did, you know, if they saved you time or something like that. You know, and be careful on how you give praise. Some people like the praise to be like at a faculty meeting or something, and some do not. I'm one of those people that I kind of cringe when my name is mentioned and, you know, and it's, you know, a shout out and everything. That's just my personality, but some people, that's what they need. So kind of know your staff and know, you know, what's needed for them. Then something for your teachers, and this could be for your option 6 and your emergency certified teachers. And even, I would even go as far as your 1 to 3 experienced teachers. But this first column just kind of gives like during their personal time or planning, you know, these are some things to do. And again, all of these that have a line, you know, they're all hyperlinked so they can go somewhere. One thing that I did here when I did this presentation before, I heard, you know, teachers talk about when I said something about walk breaks, you know, during your planning or during lunch, go outside, take a break, you know, walk around. We had at our old school, we had what was called the prayer bench. And so if you needed a moment, you could go out there and go to the prayer bench. And I mentioned that, and one of the teachers, you know, I had a couple actually say, oh no, we can't leave the building. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't leave? I was like, I don't mean like leave the school campus. I'm just talking like walk outside. And they were like, oh no, but encourage your teachers because we all know, you know, being outside, sunlight, it just re-energizes you. So encourage teachers to be able to get outside and do those kind of things. On this right side are some activities that teachers can use. And I actually worked with a teacher from a county yesterday. And, you know, some of these she didn't really know, she never had heard of before. So, you know, if I need, you know, if I can come and help and do like a little training on whether it's individual time at the beginning of the class period or it's integrated in, I would love to do that. But these are all free. I try to always do free things. Occasionally I might do something that's purchased, but I'm not really a program kind of person. I feel that that's more of a Band-Aid. And so I'm more of let's create, let's get little pieces from everything to build our program together. But all of these are really great for elementary for them to use. And they can use it at the beginning of class, you know, just however they, you know, would want to use that. And then there are some middle school and high school activities for them to do. And again, everything has links to it. And then I have a couple of just specific to our special education students. So I have a couple of things here just for them. Again, you know, I'd like to see some videos and for us to be able to do some spotlights. So if teachers or you do anything, you know, do a couple of minute video and send it to us so that we can, you know, post it and shout out to your great works that you're doing. So that's the website in a nutshell. Like I said, the plan is every couple of weeks, we'll go in there as a team and we'll add some more things on there. We're really looking at the Google form to see what else, whether it's schools, teachers, principals, admins, whatever it might be, what is it that you guys are really needing us to help with? So when you're thinking about SEL, this is what we're thinking. This is what we're talking about right here. So it's not this big thing. Sometimes, Kelly and I have talked about this, that sometimes when people talk about SEL, they think it's this big, huge thing, when really it is, if you know work ethics, that's something that has to be done at elementary all the way up to high school. These are things that you can incorporate into your work ethics. If you have a profile to a graduate, these are things that you could work into that program. So these are things that are essential for life skills. Like long time ago when I was in school, that's what we called them. We called them life skills. And we had classes on these things. And so if you'll notice, these are kind of linked together. Self-awareness and self-management. Basically, that means that you understand your emotions, your thoughts, your values. You're able to manage all of those. The green areas are all linked together also, because this is working with others, understanding others' beliefs, other opinions and emotions, and being able to work with them, even though you might not agree. And sometimes I'll have students say, oh, I can't be in agreement with them because I don't really like them. But that's a life skill. I mean, that is something that as adults, they can't go to their boss and say, I don't want to work with them. I can't. That is something that we have to teach them. We have to teach them that even though they might not agree, we have to work with them to be able to get to work together. And then responsible decision making, when they're starting to feel like that they cannot handle something and they're getting angry. I'm hearing that a lot between K through 2, that, the students are struggling during, at that grade level. And so we need to be able to help them self-regulate. And that's what responsible decision making. And one of the things that I've said this many, many times in my trainings is, if you want to decrease discipline, oops, sorry. I have like this light bulb in here that keeps going out on me. But if you want to increase academics, you want to decrease discipline, you've got to incorporate SEL. It has to happen. That's the only way that you're going to keep the students inside your room to be able to learn the academics that the teacher is sharing. So when you look at CASEL, and that's what we base everything on, is CASEL, this is kind of their framework for integration. And I'm all for it, but sometimes when you get to the student SEL part and it says, that we need to do this school-wide, sometimes we're not there. Sometimes it's too hard to do it school-wide all at once. So I kind of do, thank you. Yeah, do a little wave here. Thanks. So what I do is I kind of talk about doing one of two things. You can either have a designated time, and that's what we did at my old high school. We had one day a week. We had 20 to 30 minutes. And I did a couple of different things. We were a junior achievement school. We were a sources of strength school. So there were times when we, as a school, would do fundraisers for our mission. We would do fundraisers for our nursing home. So we would already include those things in there. But then there were also times that I would send out lessons, Google slides with lessons, with videos, with discussion questions for the teachers to lead. And they would lead those lessons and have discussions with the students. And they love doing it that way. We try to do it before where the teachers kind of were in charge of that by themselves, but it didn't really work because that's not their expertise. SEL isn't what they know at that point. So, when I started providing that for them, that helped them a whole lot. And then integrating into SEL into your content. I would start small. I would pick maybe one teacher out of each grade level, one teacher out of each content, whatever it might be, depending on your level. And I would have them to integrate it in, because it's very simple. And like if it is English, you know, maybe when you're reading a story, talk about a character, talk about their emotions, then talk about how would you feel if you were in that spot? How would you have handled that situation? Same thing with history. When you're talking about different events in history, how did they feel? How do you think they felt? How do you think you would have felt in that situation? How would you have done things differently, maybe? And then, especially in math and science, those are perfect for your relationship and your decision making skills, because that is, you know, a lot of times they're working with groups, they're working, you know, together. So have them to establish those, you know. So that's kind of how I would integrate SEL into the classroom. I might not do this full blown SEL state, you know, school wide, just because that's so difficult. And like I said, I'm not much on purchasing something because it's more of a band-aid. So if I need 5 stitches, a band-aid's not going to do it. It's going to help, but I need to add different things on there so that it will be able to, I need to add, you know, some videos. I need to add different lessons. I need to add things that are specific to our school and our community to make it more meaningful for the students. And a program just can't do that. So again, that's some of the things that I can help with. If you have any questions, just let me know. One of the things that has been really coming out is because when you look at the CDC report, looking at just February to May or February to March of this year alone, the ER rate for mental health for students from 12 to 17 has went up 31%. That same time frame, just the female students, 12 to 17, suicide attempts have went up almost 51%. So we have to change our mindset to be more trauma informed, because so much has happened. You know, students, you know, this predictable routine. Students were in school, then they weren't in school. We thought we were going to be back in a couple of weeks, but then that didn't happen. Then last year we were in for, you know, some schools were in for a couple of days, not in for a couple of days. And then all of a sudden we were shut down again. Then we come back. I mean, it's just been all over the place. So students need routine. They need to know if something is going to change. They need to know in advance that something is going to change. Even if you think, oh, it's going to be a pep rally and kids will love that. Not all kids are going to love it. They need to know that something is getting ready to happen. So we need to have that. If you have, you know, if you have a beginning teacher and they're like, you know, little Johnny, every time, you know, I was sitting back there and I tell them, you know, we're getting ready to do, you know, this activity and they need these things, XYZ, out on their desk every time that we do this activity and they're not, well, you might suggest having a visual. So have the teacher to actually put it, you know, put what they need on their desk, take a picture of it, and then post that so that it's available for the students to see. And so when they're addressing, saying, okay, we're getting ready to start our math, you know, journals or our science lab, whatever it might be, they can have a picture of it and point to it and make sure that all the students are looking at it. And so that helps them see what I need to actually, you know, have. Again, with discipline, if you have a student who's constantly coming into your office, you might ask, you know, kind of start figuring out what is it that they're doing right before they get in trouble. If it is maybe an English class and they struggle when they have to come up with a topic for writing, you might ask the teacher, you know, to let the student know that after, you know, they give the assignment, a couple of minutes, they'll come back there and they'll help that student do some brainstorming to come up with their topic. So let them know so that they're not sitting back there, because if you don't, they start thinking, oh, well, I've got to cause a disruption because I can't do this. I can't be in this room. Whereas if they know that the teacher is coming, they can go, okay, you know, I can self-regulate for a little bit. I can sit here. I know he or she is going to come and help me out. Then greet the students at the door. One of the things that, you know, is really cute, you know, elementary, they have all kinds of cute things that they can do, greeting at the door, but it's so important at middle school and high school. And I think sometimes, and I was guilty of this sometimes as a teacher, you know, you want to talk to your team, but you're missing that opportunity of greeting the students as they're coming through the door and building that relationship and that class climate right from the get-go. And I don't know if any of you all have read Senate Bill 8. It's the Resiliency and Safety Act, but 3 times in there, it states that every student will have a relationship with a trusted adult in the school. It's mentioned 3 times. And so a lot of schools, what they've done is they have listed all of the students and they've put a dot if they know something. And sometimes I hear, oh yeah, we have a relationship, every student is in a classroom. That's not exactly a relationship. That's a classroom experience. Okay. But it's not a relationship. To build that relationship, you need to be able to tell me their favorite color, tell me their favorite movie or action hero. What are their hobbies that they want to do? And so if a student doesn't have that, then what you can do is what's called a 2 by 10. So, divide those students up, and it can be, you can include your custodians, your cafeteria staff, all of these different people. So it's not only your teachers. Divide your students up and then have them to meet with somebody for 2 minutes, 10 straight days. Don't talk about anything academic. This is all just being able to learn more about that student. And it builds that relationship. And so once you have that relationship, later you can start bringing in some things about academics if you want, but build that relationship first. Then the last one in that section is don't display just A work. Encourage your teachers that, if they have a student who normally makes an F or a D, but all of a sudden they made a C, put that paper up. I'd put some glitter on it. Dang, that's great work. So encourage them to do something awesome and display not only the perfect A work that's being done in their class, but the improvements also, because students who struggle want to be up on that board just as much. And so when they do, and when they improve their grade, show that. And then we always think of goals as like, what do you want to do, especially in middle school and high school? We always associated that with, what do you want to do after high school? What do you want to do as a career? What college do you want to go to? What branch of the military do you want to join? So all of those kind of things, but help them also set goals for this year. Sometimes we do that, like when we're looking at, data. When you're looking at data for, math or reading scores, we kind of set goals, but help them do some of those kind of things for other activities that they have. And then help them create some if-then statements. If I'm in a room and, and this teacher and I just can't get along, what can I do to not get in trouble and not be sent out? So help them come up with some of those things because their brains can't process that. So they need you to help them come up with those things. Emotional check-ins, we did this when we were shut down, but a lot of schools I'm seeing now that we're back 5 days, they're not necessarily doing this. I would strongly suggest still do emotional check-ins at least once a week, just to see where our students are, because they're, just like the teachers, they're not okay. They're still struggling. So let's kind of like work on that. Again, I've already talked about the self-regulation, and kind of modeling that, whether it's through teachers, you as an administrator, model those kind of things. And don't ignore bad behavior. Sometimes in a classroom, we think, oh, if we ignore it, they'll stop doing it. But then, as a school counselor, a lot of times when the kids would come to me, I would hear, oh, that teacher doesn't like me. And I would go, why do you think that? Well, they just ignore me. So we need to be able to have discussions with the students who are getting in trouble. And we just need to be able to have productive, just dialogue of how better to handle a situation when they're needing help. And then, again, down at the bottom, self-awareness and relationship skills, those are so important for students, not only now in school, but as life skills, being able to understand what they're feeling when they're getting emotional. We have Linda Tyree talks about when she would teach her elementary students the volcano breathing. And then one day she was walking through the hallways during K-Prep and she would see a student back there doing volcano breathing, trying to be non-disruptive in class, but they were demonstrating that. So we need to teach them these skills. We need to teach them how to do some of this relationship, because I think a lot of times, especially during the pandemic, we were, as mental health people, we hated the phrase social distancing, hated it. We wanted it changed to physical distancing, because I would talk to students and I would say, have you talked to any of your friends? No. And I would be like, why? If we were in school, you would be, Snapchatting, you would be texting, why aren't you still doing that, at home? But they took that social distancing to the limit. And so now we have got to help them to figure out, how do we get along? I've heard so many schools talk about how their, students have fought more, these last couple of weeks. So we need to help them with those relationship skills, help them figure out, how do we get along again now that we're all back together? Oh, there we go. So when we're thinking about, when we talk to teachers, you have some teachers that when you ask them how they're doing, they're going to be just like Ross on Friends. I'm fine. Everything is fine. I'm good. But then you're also going to have some that will tell you honestly how they're doing. So here are just a few things that you might want to do. These first two are surveys or inventories. The first one is a professional quality of life. I would strongly suggest that you do it first before you have your staff do it. But this one, once you finish it, it kind of looks and breaks it down to compassion fatigue, occupational burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. So it kind of breaks those down and tells you where you are at each of those. So it's really good to kind of figure out, like, where are teachers right now. The Holmes Race stress inventory is just that. It measures your stress level. So that's something that either one of those I would strongly suggest to kind of give out and discuss, and then, provide teachers with some suggestions of how, different things that they can do. Let them open dialogue and share. Don't just give the survey and then don't ever discuss it. Follow up with that. Some schools do this timeout, tap out. I don't know if any of you all do. If so, I'd love to hear how it works in your schools. But this is basically, you create a team. It's usually administrators, sometimes school counselors, Friskies sometimes is included in it. And you just create a text group. And so teachers, when they just need like 5 minutes, they'll send a text saying, hey, I need a couple of minutes. And somebody from that group will text and say, hey, I'll be right back. I'll be right there. And they come, that teacher goes out for a few minutes, to regroup, and then comes back in. Every school that I have heard that's doing this has said that there has not been any issues with like overuse of it. Teachers are very respectful of it, but very appreciative that sometimes, they just need that 5 minutes to take a break. Boundaries. One of the things that Bart talks about here at Grec is that when he was at Russellville, he tried not to send out anything from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So, and I would say, because everybody gets all of their emails, on their phone, most people do. So try not to send out anything, because what happens is, you send it out and you think, oh, they're not going to look at it until the morning. No, it's on their phone. It pops up, they're looking at it. And depending on what it is, then they're starting to text with their other teachers on their team, and talking about whatever it was in this email that you didn't even mean for them to see until the next morning. So you might even set, allow that to happen. Because another thing that I've heard, when I've talked about self-care, one school district even said, oh, don't even say that word. Our teachers, don't even like hearing it. And when I asked why, they were like, well, because they say that we keep saying self-care, but then they don't feel like administrators or above are supporting it. They say to self-care, but they're not actually supporting it, because they're sending emails out, because they're asking them to do more. So just make sure that whatever you're asking of your staff, that you're following it. And we all know that there are occasions that happen that you can't control. You have to send that email out that night before. The teachers need to know before they come in that next day. And so that's totally fine. You know, allow that to happen, but just be respectful of their time. Self-care buddy, you know, encourage them to have somebody that they can share ideas with. That kind of goes with the second one or this next one. And then compassion fatigue, again, that kind of goes back up to this professional quality of life. Have them to kind of monitor that throughout. And something that we've started here at GREC is a gratitude journal, whether that's you writing it down or sending a text to somebody like I received today. You know, just send out a gratitude of, you know, something that you're appreciated for. Again, encourage them to do some stretching and walking during their breaks. Aromatherapy, I would be very careful with that. We had a triple homicide in our county last year, and we had and the kids were home. So when they came back to school, we had to make sure that our teachers knew not to have incense going or candles, because if a candle accidentally got blown out, then the smell would automatically remind the students, and it would trigger that instant for them. So be careful with aromatherapy. I mean, I'm all in for, you know, essential oils, but just be careful with what scent you actually use. And then listening to music, even while I was teaching, you know, as soon as I got finished talking and it was time for students to work, whether individually or group, I always had music going. Music is a great way for us, you know, staff to kind of regroup. A friend of mine talked about how before she would do Zoom meetings, she would, you know, put on some hard rock and, you know, really dance it out before. So maybe even encourage them right before, you know, their planning is over, before lunch is over, that they kind of just get some of that, you know, that energy out of them to be able to teach the rest of the day. And then I've talked about this Google form before. So some upcoming trainings that we're going to have here at GREC focusing on SEL is trauma-informed practice. The first one is Thursday, which I know is very soon. So, but we're going to do it again on November 11th. And we're just going to focus on the trauma, you know, discussing what trauma is, the impact and challenging behaviors in the classroom. And then the afternoon, we're going to focus solely on strategies. So about 2 hours of that, I'll be going over like different strategies that teachers can use through elementary all the way up to high school on things that they can use. And then we're going to look at the trauma-informed plans. You know, each district had to submit that to the state. And so we're going to kind of look at those and what that should include at the state level. And then Scott Howard is on here, but I want to do a big old shout out to him and the STAR grant, because they are also providing this book during training. Oops, there goes my light again. So it's a great book, and it's a great training. So again, we're offering it this Thursday and November 11th. Something that we are working on, we don't have a date yet, but kind of pulling the MTSS, we're looking at academic, PBIS, SEL, trauma. How do you pull it all together? How does it all work together? How do you look at it? How does it, you know, how do you do it so that's not just individual things? So we are going to start working on that and come up with a training. And then, you know, you have all this SEL data, you know, you might be doing a universal screener, look at your attendance, your behavior, all of these things for SEL. We're going to look at how do you look at that data, and then what do you do with it? How do you determine who's in tier 2? What are we doing in tier 1 as a universal for all of our students? And then what can we do as a tier 2 process? So, whew, that was it.
Thank you, Charlene. Some really, really great ideas and strategies with supporting your staff around self-care, SEL. So make sure you reach out to Charlene if you, you know, would like some additional support in that area. I know that's on the top of everyone's list, but hopefully you can, I'll be sharing out this slide deck. So hopefully you can maybe pull a couple of ideas that she has shared to use with your staff. So thank you, Shirley. I do appreciate you taking time out as well to share with our group today. I wanted to, I was watching the chat as well, and I know Brian Lyle shared out about his Rise and Shine Challenge games. Brian, I don't know if you want to share, if you're still with us right now, or if you would like to share any additional information. I know someone kind of asked about some of the examples of the game. So, and I want to give out a shout out to him as well, because I'm copied on his, he sends out an email like on Monday mornings and gives a shout out to, you know, the staff and just things that he hears from parents. And I don't know, it's just, that's uplifting to me when I see that pop in. I can never wait to see what's going to be, what the parents are saying or what the staff members are saying. So I enjoy that. Brian, I'm gonna let you, if you want to share just a moment, go right ahead.
I sure can. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I love our great news and successes email each Monday morning. It's one of those things. It's kind of like Sherilyn just mentioned. It's that little boost, going into your next week to say, hey, this is why we do what we do. And it's just good. But yeah, Jennifer had asked about our Rise and Shine games that we started last year when we were, when our students were virtual and teachers had to be here 30 minutes before virtual classes ever started. And we just started creating games to have fun and laugh together. I've got a little document that I've started making some notes because I've had some questions on these, but most of it's chicken scratch. So I'll try to go through some of it and kind of explain it. But like one game we did is just let's make a deal, something simple to where we had 3 envelopes and the staff pick one of the envelopes. And in one of the envelopes, it may be that you get to leave 30 minutes early. Of course, that worked well when we were virtual, a little bit harder during the school day. But another one would be that you draw and every staff gets to leave 30 minutes early. Then the third one would be maybe an autographed picture of me or an autographed picture of our superintendent, just something to laugh and have fun. We also put that at the end of games where we would have just name that tune, where we would give the opening line of a song. And from that, the teachers had to name the title of the song. And so that was fun. Again, it had nothing to do with school. It had everything just to get to know each other better and laugh together. We played Card Shark, just like the old game, where you would have the big cards and higher or lower. And each time they got one right, it was 5 minutes early that they got to leave. Just, just different games like that. We did a game with dice where each time you roll it, my assistant principal, Mr. Gloyd, he came up with deal or no deal, just like you see on the game show. And each envelope they opened was a certain amount of time that they got to leave early. But you could do things different than just leave early. You could put different prizes in it, whatever you wanted to do. But it was a fun time for us last year. And like I said, I'm hoping to find that opportunity to do it again this year, but it's tough right now just because trying not to put anything more on my teachers before school or after. And because I know they're swamped, they're overwhelmed just like everyone. And so it's just finding that time. And I think that's the toughest piece now. But yeah, that was a good opportunity for us last year.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for sharing. And that's, this is one thing that before we move on, that I want to incorporate each time we meet is to kind of have some principal spotlights. All right. Just some great things that are happening in your schools and having some share outs. So I'm so happy that Brian could share that. So we're going to transition over and I'm going to share my screen again. But before I do, we have Jennifer Larkins from KDE with us today. And so I will start sharing my screen, and then there she is. I wanted to put a name with a face. We're glad to see you, Jenny. And I'm going to start sharing my screen again, and then I'm just going to turn it over to her. We really felt like it was important to be able to have someone here representing KDE just to give us some, some updates and just to share those hot topic items with you, and then let you have an opportunity to ask questions if needed. And so we're happy to have Jenny with us today. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm glad to be here with you all today. I am from the Office of Assessment and Accountability. So the updates will be sort of contained to topics that involve assessment and accountability. And I was thinking that as I was listening to Mr. Goff and then Ms. Bratcher, one of the themes that was pretty evident is that there have been a lot of challenges this year still. And, I think that's something we've heard across the state. It's not, not just specific to your school. It is something that we're aware of that everybody's facing. And so I completely understand if assessment and accountability aren't topics that you really want to have to deal with right now, but I guess it is part of our reality. So I just want to remind you that our office, though we have to share these things, we also do it with the mindset that we are here to support you in any way we can, and hope that you'll keep that in mind, that you can reach out to us with any questions at any time, not just during this happening right here. And we'll go ahead and get started then on the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Kelly, with just kind of closing out last year. So about 2 weeks ago, your district assessment coordinators and building assessment coordinators, and probably a lot of you, were able to look at your data for the last time before it gets released publicly. And we did notice a couple of systemic issues during that time. So what you saw a couple weeks ago could look a little different in regard to gifted, talented, migrant, I think homeless. There were a few data load issues with certain groups of students that might look a little different. And then there were some exemptions or like non-participations that were applied a little differently that you might notice some differences is. But basically what you saw is what you're going to see when the school report card opens. So you'll see that first in the schools and districts on the 27th, and then the following day it will be made available to the media. And then the day after that, on the 29th, the report card will be open for the public. And one of the main things I wanted to point out about this is that our office has created 5 different resources for you to use to help you tell your school or your district story. One of those is a customizable PowerPoint template. I think it's got maybe close to 50 slides. You can use all of them. You can use some of them. So you can, delete, edit, add your own slides, but we just gave you a good start with a lot of tables in there so that you can just, plug your own data numbers in there and then be able to share with your board or, with your staff, whatever shareholders you might want to share with. We've tried to put in there a focus on the message that the data from this year are not necessarily comparable to what data we've had in the past because of all of the things that have happened and with COVID and not as many students testing and, just the challenges. And then we put a slide in there that to kind of help you point out the bright spots that you've had in your school, not necessarily about assessment and accountability. So we know the story, as somebody mentioned, the narrative, I think Mr. Goff mentioned that you're going to have to tell is going to be a little bit harder to explain this year. So we're trying to give those supports to you to help with that. We've included a couple parent letters. There's a how to prepare for public release document in there. So those resources, we intended for them to go out yesterday, but we had some trouble on our website. So that we're sending out a special email today with links to those resources that will go to your district assessment coordinators. And then I'm happy to share in the chat the link where those are found if your DAC doesn't typically forward those emails to you. They're on our communications page on our website. So that will kind of close out last year. And then as we go into the next slide, that will move into this current school year. So this current school year, we've listed here for you the assessments that we have planned for this year that are required as state assessments. Pending any changes, we made a special note down there, anything could happen, we've found out over the last couple of years, but this is what's planned for now. And as you can see, it's pretty much what we've had every year for the last few years. So access testing is still on, the ACT for juniors, the Kentucky Summative Assessment. And maybe you've heard by now. If not, this would be a good time for me to share that what has been called K-Prep for the last several years is now going to be called the Kentucky Summative Assessment. So Kentucky Summative Assessment in reading and math and so on. Now, science has had this title for a little while since the new science standards went into play. And that's the reason for the name change. Whenever the standards are updated, we typically have a change in the name of the assessment. And so it's just that time. So now, and you'll see on your student reports when they come out this year, that they'll have that name on there. Alternate will still have the name K-Prep on last year's reports, but when you get last year's Pearson reports for regular K-Prep, it's actually going to say Kentucky Summative Assessment on it. So that you're not surprised by that, I'll point that out. The kindergarten screen is also given this year, and it is back to the regular schedule. Remember last year, the time frame was waived and we basically held the K-screen window open all year. Well, it's back on the regular window for this year where the all screenings and data and everything have to be over by October 15th. Then we also have those early graduate students taking end of course exams for at least again this year. And those will also be available for those students. Then we have a couple of little programs going on that are specific to certain districts. One of those is a speech to text pilot. And 7 districts right now have participated in that last week. And this coming week, we are going to have gather feedback from them on their experience from the administrators and from the students, and then have some little focus groups. And if they find that speech to text pilot was successful, then you should see that implemented in this coming spring's assessments. And just as a reminder, that's just a program where students can speak into the computer and it will take their speech and transfer it to text in this text box. So it's kind of a replacement for like what a scribe would be for students who have that on their IEPs. So on the next slide, we've just provided the same information to you in like a one-pager that you can print out if you choose to. And it's just a table that shows you what grade level takes each type of assessment, what's available. So that you can just print out. We won't go any further into that. But then if we move into the slide with accountability, so yeah, there's that one pager right there that gives the testing plan there. So now we'll kind of move into accountability. And then if we think back on the public release, remember that is for last school year where we did not have accountability. So in the school report card, you're not going to see any ratings, no stars or colors or anything like that. And this data you will see in the school report card is based on assessed students rather than those 100-day accountable students. But if you remember back in 2020, that legislative session, a Senate Bill 158 was passed that made changes to the accountability system. So through a long process going through the legislative committees, we're anticipating that to be finalized over the next couple months so that the changes that were mandated in 158 will be implemented for this 21-22 school year. And it's pretty similar to what we had before, but there are some changes, and one being with the state, excuse me, state indicators that you'll see on the next slide. The indicators, many of them will look the same, but the Senate bill made a very clear reference to the word exclusive, basically saying that we will have these 6 indicators and that we can't add or take away from those without some sort of legislative change. Now they are very similar to what we've had in the past, except maybe a little name change. And there is one significant difference. So those state assessment results in all the content areas, those first 2 indicators are what we did call proficiency and separate academic indicator. They are applied to all of the grade bands, elementary, middle, and high. Then the progress on English language proficiency, that is its own indicator now. So that is something new. In the previous system, it was part of what we called transition readiness indicator, which is now post-secondary readiness. So English proficiency has been pulled out of transition readiness again, and it is its own indicator, and it will be at all 3 levels. That quality of school climate and safety survey, that indicator was in the previous system. It has stayed at all 3 levels. And then at high school only, you still have the post-secondary readiness, which we did call transition readiness, and graduation rate. Graduation rate hasn't changed. It's still the 4 or 5 year cohort average. And then post-secondary readiness, again, the big change is that it has the English language progress removed and put into its own indicator. And then a couple other changes that you might remember that weren't really part of Senate Bill 158, but more just regulation change from before the Senate bill. And then also something we heard from USED, that it's no longer a B or higher on those dual credit courses for academic and career readiness, but it's C or higher. And then also that it applies, the post-secondary readiness applies not just to grade 12 graduates, but also to grade 12 non-graduates. Because remember, post-secondary readiness comes into play in that senior year. So, and then if we move on to the next slide, the other big difference about the accountability system in the based on Senate Bill 158 are these terms status and change. And basically status is something that we have been doing all along, and it's just basically the results from this year's performance. So whatever results there are, that's the status. What happened this year, that's your status. So we give you a number each year. You know, you have, say, maybe a proficiency, as it was called, state assessment results in reading and mathematics. Here's your number. For this year, that would be status, your performance level, basically. Now, status and change are going to be evaluated for each state indicator, each of those 6. But for this current year, this first year that it's being implemented, we're only going to be able to have status, because change requires 2-year data, because change is improvement from the prior year. So when we have results this year, again, they're only going to be for status. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a future slide, that when we talk about coming up accountability, because it's kind of hard to discuss the status and change without talking about the table. So the 6 indicators and the status and change, those are going to be the big things. Now, each one of those indicators has a level of weight applied to it, as you see, and they look a little different for each grade band. And that's something kind of new. We didn't have them separated out, elementary and middle, before, but you'll see this year that they are separated out a little bit different. And the weights look a little bit different for those, and for high school, you'll see. You have a lot more weight this year, it seems like, in the state assessment results. And part of that is based on the federal requirements of certain components. Like, for example, the USED says that high school, the weight for reading and math and graduation rate have to be at least 51% of the system. So that, we have to follow those guidelines. And then there's a little bit of wiggle room where the rest of the weight falls. And that was determined by the KBE, and then also public comment was weighed into that. And our different advisory groups also weighed in. So these were the weights that were settled upon. And so those indicators, once you have those results, the numbers behind the status and change, then those weights are applied, and that will provide an overall performance level. And if you look at the next slide, you'll see that that overall performance level will be assigned a color, with blue being the highest and red being the lowest. Now, again, these are colors that you'll see, not this current school year. Not this past school year when we get public release, but the next time we have public release, these are anticipated to go in, where each school will be assigned a color. And of course, there will be a number behind those colors that you will have access to, and it will be in there. But these will be on the school report card dashboard. So that's kind of similar to the way we did before, where it was stars instead of colors. And then those will take place again in the next fall reporting. So just to give you a little bit more detail about status and change and to talk about what's coming in the future, we have provided on the next slide an example of what the tables might look like to represent status and change. So for each one of those 6 state indicators, there's going to be a table that will be developed. And you see here that down the first column, you've got the status levels from very high down through very low in the current year. Again, status is current year performance. Across the top, you see the change levels that will be included beginning in 22-23 that range from decline significantly from prior year to increase significantly from prior year. And so where those two meet, the cell where the two meet, that would be your color for that indicator. So as an example, if you had medium in the current year and you maintained from the prior year, then where those two cells meet would be yellow. So that would be your status level for that indicator for that year. And I know it's a little complicated to speak through quickly, so I'm happy to clarify if anybody has a question on that. But for this year, this current school year we're in, we're only going to see status. So we don't know exactly yet. We're still in conversations about how it will be represented. But obviously, because we don't have change this year, it's likely not to be in a table like this. So we don't know if we're just going to have numbers or if we'll just have a color for status or how it's going to be represented yet. But this is what the long-term situation will look like when we get to status and change. And again, those will all have numbers behind them, or like what we say, cut scores for each level, for each box with yellow, green, blue, and so on. They'll each have a number that says if you're at that number, you know, you're going to be in that category. So that, I know that was a very high level overview of it, but I kind of went through it quickly, for one, because you may already be familiar with it, but also because you'll see on the next slide, I have provided some links to a lot more detailed presentations on this that have been recorded and that are available on our website. So about this coming year's assessments, about the reporting, what it's going to look like as it comes out next week, and then also about the accountability system. That goes into a lot more detail than what I have now. But just based on what I've gone over now, I am happy to take any questions that you have. And if I can't answer, I'm happy to get back with you later on that. I mean, we definitely, again, are here to support you and want to help you through any of this that we can. And I can't see chat right now, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's, well, let me just.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat. If anyone has a question, just feel free to unmute and ask. And you may not have any right at this moment, and that's okay as well.
And I know I did go through it pretty quickly, and I also just put in chat the link to where our DAC emails are posted. So it's not always the same day that they come out. It might be another day or two. But if you are interested in those public release resources, again, we're sending out an email today that within the next couple of days should be posted on this site if you don't get it from your DAC. And again, I'll hang around a little while. And this has been an interesting conversation for me to hear Mr. Goff and Ms. Bratcher also. So I'll hang around for a little while in case anybody does have any questions, Kelly.
All right. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that, because I think sometimes, you know, information goes to central office and it goes to the DAC, and sometimes the principals takes a little while for them to hear all of the information and the changes that are taking place. And so I think was very crucial for them to hear this, and I'm sure there'll be questions. And as we move forward, even after our meeting today, if you have questions, you can just shoot me an email and I can get in touch with Ms. Larkin, and we can make sure to get those questions answered. So
absolutely. Yes. Thank you very much.
yes, thank you. All right, so next up on our agenda, we're going to have a little principal spotlight. I'm excited about this, adding this to our network meetings. And so I reached out to David Carmichael from Todd County Middle School, and he was gracious to say that he would share with us today. And I looked at his slides after he put them in there, and I'm so excited for him to share the work that's been going on since he's been there. And David, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you get started.
Great. So thanks, Kelly and Greg, for the invitation. I've never spoke on one of these. I don't think I've done anything except just maybe type a few questions in the chat bar. And I don't think I really participated in these a whole lot until last year. But I think with COVID and everything else last year, I was trying to tap into every resource I could. So I will start just by introducing myself. I know a lot about several on this group just because I've heard your name for years, and others I've had to Google, where are they from? So I will start just kind of giving you a little background on myself. Kelly, if you want to switch to that next slide so I can remind myself of what I wanted to throw in here. I've been at Todd County Middle School for 14 years now. My background is music education. I was the band and music teacher here for 10 years, and then did the very unconventional and ill-advised move of moving directly from the classroom to head principal. Everyone that ever talks to me about going up the ladder, I recommend it highly, just because it's a hard transition to go from that level all the way to principal, but I made it. So it is possible. I'll just say I had good help, and that helped as well. But this is starting my 4th year at the middle school as principal. We've had a lot of changes here in the last 4 or 5 years, and when Kelly reached out and said, "Hey, can you talk about what's going on with PBIS and MTSS at the middle school?" I thought, yeah, I could talk about that for a while. So I will share just a little bit of that with you today. And if you all have comments, just feel free to stop in the middle of it. You don't have to wait for me to pause, just unmute and blurt it out. And if I need to explain something better or answer something, I'll be glad to. So Kelly, if you want to move to the next slide, I'll give everyone a little background knowledge on what's happened. And I wanted to focus specifically on behavior, because that was our first big goal when we started 4 years ago. I just went ahead and put on this screen for everyone to be able to look at what we were dealing with when we began in 2018. That was my first year as principal. The year before, we had a little over 1,300 office referrals that were entered into Infinite Campus. And I do make that caveat because we found a box of referrals that never made it in our first year. So the number was actually higher than that. And I know they tell all of us when we go into our principal prep programs, don't make any huge sweeping changes your first year. You sit back, observe, and then move forward. But for those who, like me, were in the same school you were in when you moved into the administrative role, you're moved in there because they know who you are and they're aware of the changes that need to be made. So we were able to move pretty quickly on that. We sit down with our teachers on opening day and we told them, we said, we've been in the classroom with you. We know we've got to get this under control. For those that don't know where Todd County is, I didn't until I took the first job here 14 years ago. We are sandwiched between Logan County and Christian County. You don't come here by mistake. It is a very small county. We're very rural. In our school, we have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I think the largest we've ever been was around 470 students. We usually stay somewhere between 425 and 450. So looking at a student population of that and seeing that number of major office referrals, you probably can have a pretty good idea of what was going wrong in 2017 and 2018. So we had to make some changes, and we knew we needed to make them fast. And so we put several things in place, and you can look at the data there. Last year, we had an off year with kind of going back and forth between hybrid and in person. We did not do a whole lot of virtual in Todd County last year. We started that way and had to go that way a couple times just because of the numbers spiking, but the majority of our year was spent either hybrid or in person with everyone masked up. But even with that, we had 80 major office referrals last year. And we were thrilled with that, not because we were happy with what we had 80 office referrals, but because compared to 3 or 4 years previous, that's manageable and it lets us know things are on the right track. The best compliment I have received from any teacher in this building over the last 3 years happened about 2 years ago when one of the teachers came to me and said, Mr. Carmichael, I don't know what all y'all do up front. I honestly don't, but please keep doing it. This is the first time in 14 years that I've been able to teach. Like the issues were no longer an issue in their class to the point that they felt like they were being inhibited from teaching their best. And so when teachers are coming to me saying, hey, we are grateful for the ability to be able to teach again, that lets me know that the discipline issues that we were having are kind of under control now. So I don't know how many of you are in a similar boat or were in a similar boat, but I thought I'd highlight just a few of the things that we've done that have been effective. Because even if your numbers are in the hundreds and you want to get them down, I think what we've done has been effective to allow the teachers to feel supported and for the students to understand the expectations and kind of get them in line with those. We've had a huge culture change at the school, and that's literally from the student level to the teacher level to the classified level to the administrative level. And it shows when you look at our retention numbers of staff. We were running 50 to 70% leaving every year for several years in a row. Last year, we had 3 people leave in the building, and that wasn't my choice. So, I mean, the people want to stay here, and I'm thrilled they do. We're trying to get things done right. So, Kelly, if you want to move to that next slide, what I've done is just basically kind of gone through what we've done each year. Because it is a process. They tell you when you take the first job as an administrator, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to see any results. They're right. They don't happen overnight. But I did want to just break down and talk about some of the things that we've done that you might look into if you're looking for things to improve what's going on at your school. I put a picture up there of my first year as an administrator, and next to me is Kimberly Davis. She's our assistant principal, and we were both first-year administrators that year. And so we were asking for guidance and help throughout the process, but we learned together and kind of built this together. So I wanted to make sure I gave her a shout out today, and that's why I put the picture on there, so I didn't forget to do that. So over the summer, that first year, one of the things that we were able to do was reach out to Kentucky Avery. And I know we're not using them this year. And I'm thrilled that we're going to have Krista available there at Greg. And I was excited as Chase was giving us information there. I was jotting down notes and email addresses and things that we can reach out for resources there. But if you don't know Patty Whitney, I've got her picture on a slide here in a little bit. She's a wonderful resource that we used for the last 3 years through Avery. Just kind of sit down with her and talk through some of the things that we wanted to do at the school level. And the biggest thing we always ask for are resources. And so she just kind of put us into touch with some of those resources. The first thing we did, was sit down as an administrative staff. I had Ms. Davis and Kim Rager, our guidance counselor, sit down, and I said, I want to come up with 3 very clear rules for this school. It doesn't matter which classroom you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in the hallway. It doesn't matter if you're on the bus. I want a small set of rules that our students and staff understand we live by and that we enforce. And so we came up with 3 rules. Ours are respect all adults. And that starts when you get on the bus in the morning. It continues when you go into the classroom, continues in the hallway when you see our custodial staff, when you go through the lunch line. If it's an adult in the building, they're going to show them respect. And I go through on the first day of school with the students. I meet with each grade level and just tell them, the best way to do that is, to get used to saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, no, sir, no, ma'am. Even if they're caught, and called out and someone says, hey, stop doing that, and they weren't doing it. We go through and coach them and say, look, just say yes, sir. And then after, the class is over, go up and say, hey, you called me out for that. I didn't want to be disrespectful, but that wasn't me. And so we've kind of coached the students on the behavior we wanted there. Our second rule is, actually we changed it this year. Our first year, it was don't speak when an adult is speaking to the group. However, as we learned and revised our PBIS system, that is not phrased correctly because you're not supposed to have a negative rule. And so what we did was change that to listen when an adult is speaking to the group. So that's our second rule now. And then our third rule that they hear every morning and get tired of me saying over our intercom when we do morning announcements and shout outs is to work hard and be nice. And we go through our explanation of what that looks like in every capacity of the school. So we go over that with staff, including our bus drivers, including our cafeteria ladies, so they understand our rules. And so if students aren't meeting those expectations, they call them out on. The second thing we put in practice was the Alveus system. And I don't know how many of you have used that. I know we have used it now. We're going into our fourth year of using that system. Our elementary schools have used it. And I know Jennifer Wheeler's on here from South Todd. She can chime in or throw it in the chat box. I think this is either their second or third year using it there. But this is an anti-bullying curriculum, essentially. When we started it, it was a free resource through the state. Yep, thank you, Ms. Euler. Second year for the elementary schools. It was a free resource. It's not super expensive, but essentially what it does is it gives some videos to watch if you choose to do that, and also gives some scenarios and materials for teachers to use for small group settings. And so what we do is during our advisory period each week, we made a special point to kind of go through this. We had a large bullying issue at the school when we started 4 years ago. And I'm thrilled to say that those numbers have gone significantly down. But I'm also thrilled to say our students are doing a wonderful job of reporting it when they see it. And that was the biggest problem we had at the school, was a lot of bullying going on and us not knowing about it until the parents got mad and came in and said, why isn't the school doing anything about this? It's because we didn't know it was happening. And so what it does, the program does, is basically get students to realize their part in bullying, because everyone plays a part. You're either an observer and your lack of anything you say supports what's being done by the bully, or what you do or say is helping the one that's being bullied. But it's this whole framework of trying to get students to kind of swing their area of where they are at in the bullying ring, to try to kind of stomp that out and let those who are interested in bullying students know that they're standing on an island of their own, and that the rest are opposed to that. The first year, it was beyond intense trying to deal with all the bullying referrals. We were swamped. And I think the biggest reason that we were that way was because it was actually working. The students were watching for bullying, like they were actually trying to find it, because the classes were working. The students were able to talk about it and discuss things in a very private setting, and be able to say things and talk about things. Turning my radio down, sorry. That made their eyes kind of get open to what was being done. And so they were watching for it, and they were reporting things that weren't bullying, that were just some kids being mean. But it's okay. We still dealt with those and still tried to work with those. So the first year was a little rough. The second year got a little better. The third year, we were just getting legitimate cases of bullying that were being reported and being able to deal with those swiftly. And the students felt supported. They felt safe. And we were able to kind of really clamp down on that. We worked a whole lot with our staff on defining behaviors. And I think with PBIS, this is the hardest thing to do, is making sure everything is consistent with everyone. And it took a series of meetings for us to talk that through. From something as simple as tardy. Is the student tardy if they're in the door when the bell rings, or do they have to be seated with their things out? And we had to agree upon that as a staff. We literally went through every single behavior on our behavior matrix at the school and talked about what it looked like and whether or not it was requiring an office referral or reteaching at first, or what we needed to do there. And what we realized very quickly was that there was just a lot of confusion. Teachers didn't have the same expectations or the same understanding of what warranted an office referral. We had some teachers who, if they saw a student out with their phone, would just say, "Hey, put that away," and others who would grab it, slap it down on the table with an office referral, and that kid was in trouble. And so we had to work with all of our staff to say, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do this collectively. So the students don't think, oh, well, this teacher allows it, this one doesn't. And so we went through and talked through those. And it took most of the year to do that because we wanted to give the time and attention to make sure everyone understood the expectation and then we're able to support it. We provided a whole lot of encouragement and support to our teachers in that. And sometimes it meant reteaching on our part to the teachers and say, hey, you wrote this up. We went ahead and dealt with this kid, but we need to talk about that again because remember 2 weeks ago, we said that didn't qualify as an office referral. That's not what was going on there. And so we really focused on that a whole lot that first year. We went through several of our policies and found several issues with it. Where some of our policies didn't line up with certain forms. We've got an academy here where we send students with repeated behavior or severe behavior, and their form that we had to fill out didn't align with our policy as far as the matrix we used to address those behaviors. So we had to reshape those policies and make those recommendations to site-based. There were several policies that were in that boat that we looked at changing. Our biggest thing that we did that first year was radically change our PLC structure. Our building is full of singletons. We don't have any teacher that teaches the same grade level and content of another teacher. And I know many middle schools in our region are in that same boat. We decided to shift from the idea of common planning for our content teams and instead went to common planning for grade level teams. That was a huge change for us, but what it allowed us to do was to start talking about students rather than teachers. We weren't talking about specific standards and assessment items on a constant basis unless they were directly tied to students. And that was a huge change for us, and it opened the door for a lot of the stuff we did in the second year. But it was really moving to that idea and concept of, if we're going to come together as a staff, we better be talking about kids. And that was a change for us. A lot of times when we met in previous years for PLCs, we were talking about what do I need to do differently as a teacher. And so that was changed. The last thing that we really did was we went over our office referral data with the team of teachers and staff every month. We sat down with them. We put a big chart up on the screen that showed how many referrals had been submitted that month. We put the area of the building they had occurred in. We put a number that was assigned to each teacher. So if I knew I was number 14, that was my number. I could look and see how many students I had written up for the month of September. That was really eye-opening for a lot of our staff. And we reminded them, if your number is, 16 referrals this month and the next highest number was 2, it doesn't mean you're a bad teacher. It might have been that during the full moon cycle, you had 4 fights break out in class. Well, those all get office referrals. We're not telling you not to write those up. We're telling you, you need to make note of that and say, okay, are these students moving from class to class together as like a herd? And if so, is it that they're giving me an issue because I'm doing something differently in my class as far as behavior management than they are in the other classes? Or is it just I get them last period and by then the meds have worn off, which is a real possibility. And so we talked through all that with the staff, and everything we gave to them, we made sure they understood. We understand this is a fix that we're having to do building wide. This is not going to come across in any way as judgmental on our part. We're here to support. Ask us for help, and we'll be glad to give it. So, Kelly, if you want to move over to that next slide, that framework allowed us to move into the second year, which is when we really started to see things change. We continued our work with Patty Whitney, whose picture is up there at the top, and Kentucky Avery. They just helped us take our data and organize it in a way that made it real easy to look at and interpret what we were seeing. And that was probably the biggest thing that helped us in that second year, where we were able to give, and it's even got there in that picture, a little diagram of a pyramid where tier 1 was the green, tier 2 was the yellow, and tier 3 was the red. We created those for both behavior and academics to figure out where our students were. And then we used those triangles to identify students when we met together as PLCs and discussed different supports and different interventions we could put in place for our students. Teachers were able to do that and got really excited about it when they started to see the progress of our students. The bigger change, I guess, that I made that caused a lot of flack at the beginning was I changed almost every teacher's room in the building that year. I got some angry looks, and we had some come aparts from teachers who had been in the same room for 11 or 12 years. We all know you accumulate everything in the world in your room if you don't move very often. It's like when you live in a house for a while, you start packing up and going somewhere else, you realize how much stuff you've accumulated. It's the same thing when they move rooms. And the reason I said I wanted to change the rooms was to get our students somewhat compartmentalized. If you've never been in our building, we have 2 halls. Our building is literally a big T. And so what I chose to do was to have before, where we had a 6th grade reading classroom at the end of one hall and science room at the other end of that hall and my math room halfway up the second hall. I took all 4 content areas and put them literally across from each other. So if you want to see our 6th grade team, you go to the end of our east hallway and they're all down there together. Our 7th grade team's in the front hall within eye shot of each other. Same thing with the 8th grade, they're just on the other end. And then our back wing we use for our related art, our special classes, or our elective classes. I did that for the biggest purpose of letting our 6th graders be acclimated to the building a little easier. All of their classes are on that back hall, so they're not having to find where they need to walk. And that was originally my biggest draw to doing it that way, was to have that easier for our 6th graders, because it was traumatic for them every year. The wonderful thing I found in doing that was we had PLCs meeting between every period, every day. I mean, the teachers were out there, and it was just a quick, hey, we did this today and it was fantastic. And they were saying, great, I've got that unit planned for next week. Tell me what I need to go over again. And so we had math teachers that were telling social studies teachers, hey, if you're going to do that, that graph that you were talking about, can you use this language when you do it? And the conversations in the hallways were constant about what was going on, and they were celebrating things that were happening in class as a grade level team. And you could feel it in the air when you walk down the hall. Instead of it being that kind of negative, I'm out here on my own kind of feeling that had been the culture here for a while, it was the camaraderie and we are helping each other through this, and we're able to celebrate the joys and the successes we're having as a team. And that was infectious even to the students. Like they realized that the teachers were bragging on them as they were going through the halls. The other thing we did was we changed our PBIS committee. We have a standing committee here that was just forever known as PBIS, and we added the MTSS component. And this was a big deal to us because it changed the focus to the whole child. We were no longer talking about specifically just behavioral things. We were talking about everything related to those kids. We drilled into everyone at the school. I know growing up, it was the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's just, we still got 3 R's. It's just relationships, relationships, relationships. That became the pinnacle of everything we do here. And that second year is when we really started to move to that and really focused on, let's continue to realize that if students are getting just write up after write up after write up, we've got to change our thinking on that. And we did that year. Teachers stopped talking about, hey, I'm writing this kid up and nothing's happening to them. You know, they're not getting any real consequence for that. Stop talking about that. And what the conversation started being was, hey, what's going on with this kid? Like, we're trying this and we've tried this and we've tried this, and I'm not seeing a change in their behavior. So what do we do next? And that was a huge thing for us as a building. Was it was no longer about the consequence for the kid. It was about finding something that would help that kid be successful and be able to get past or replace the behavior that was causing them to have the roadblock there. And it was a huge shift for us as a staff and as a building. And again, that just continued throughout the year. We pushed a lot of the autonomy back on our teachers as far as consequences went, and told them not everything needs to come to me. You know, if my kids just losing their mind at home, I don't call the SWAT team to come deal with them. You know, if there's a huge emergency at home, I'm going to try to take care of it. And if I can, I might call 911, but I'm not going to call the SWAT team down. And so we just told them, we said, if a kid's being a booger for you, if you want to assign them lunch detention, assign them lunch detention. And someone's hand shot up and they said, can we have them come to our room and do lunch detention with us? 5 years ago, that would have never been asked in this building. Lunchtime was sacred time. It was the one time we got to be with adults. We sure didn't want to spend that time with kids. We have teachers in our building today who are holding lunch detention with their kids during their lunch break. And it's because they want to talk to the kids and reshape behaviors and say, look, I need this time to talk to you because I don't want to do it when there's a room full of kids in here. And I do want you to be helpful, or I do want you to be successful. And they're working with them to build that relationship so they can get the right sort of behaviors during class. Kelly, I'm talking too long. You got to move me on to the next slide. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
All right. So last year, Miss Davis and I both throughout the summer last year found just about every professional development workshop that we could go to on trauma-informed practices and MTSS, and really pushed ourselves to find more resources available to us to give our staff and to give our kids. The biggest thing we did last year that helped us, and for me, I know it's the reason we had 80 office referrals instead of the few hundred from the year before. We left that committee intact. We had a habit in this building, a practice in this building of moving teachers around from year to year to a different standing committee. And the idea behind that was we didn't want them to get burnt out, and we wanted them to have a voice from every different part of what the school dealt with. But what we realized was we were having to retrain a different group of people every year on our basic foundation of what this school's built on. And we just sat at each other and looked at it. Kim Davis and I looked across the table from each other and said, why are we doing that? Why don't we just keep our core team together? And if we have someone leave, and we've got several teachers in the building that are aspiring administrators, if they get a job and we have a new member take their spot, then we work them up to where they understand it, but we're not having to retrain an entire team. And so that team goes out and disperses. And when we have PLCs, with every one of those PLCs, there's at least one member of that committee that's there. So when questions come up, it's not us telling this is what we do. It's that team member of that committee that's saying, hey, we talked about this last week. We need to do this. And so they're kind of leading that discussion. It's really allowed us to have a lot more momentum and changing some things. And then I can't talk enough about the climate of this building and the culture here. You can walk from one end of the hall to the other, and the things that you hear are totally different than what they were 4 or 5 years ago. We're not talking about being worn out and tired and kids misbehaving. It's, hey, did you notice so-and-so is crying today during class? Like those are conversations in the hallway, you know, or, hey, be careful with these kids. There's something going on today with them. Our teachers are so cognizant and so observant now of the students because they've gone and formed those relationships with them that when anything's off with that child, they're catching it immediately. And we had a huge uptick last year when we went to the hybrid schedule of students that we were having to refer to DCBS. And it wasn't our administrative staff that was doing that, it was the teachers. Talking to the kids and realizing something was off, and then just alerting us and saying something's wrong with my kid today. Can you talk to them? And we got them up here, and something had happened at home. But it was the teachers that had formed those relationships that were able to get that. While we've had this meeting today, I've had two students email me and said, "Hey, Mr. Carmichael, can I talk to you before the day's over?" That makes me so happy. It makes me so happy because my office is not a place where students dread to come. It's a place where they dread coming if they've done something they know is wrong, but they feel welcome to come and talk to me about things that are going on. And that wasn't the case a few years ago. And it's just this whole concept of what do our kids need and what can we do to help them, and forming those relationships to make sure they understand we're here to help in any way we can. We all learned when we went through the law classes for our principal certification in loco parentis. When they're here, they're ours. And our teachers are starting to buy into that here, and they're their kids, and they're treating them that way. And we've had huge successes on it. And my biggest thing that I'll share, if you want to move to that last slide, Kelly, is I've been able to do more walkthroughs this year than in probably my first 2 years combined, and we're not halfway through the first 9 weeks. I mean, you take the first 2 years of an administrator and combine the number of times I was able to get out and do walkthroughs, I've probably beat that number, and we're at midterm of the first 9 weeks. And the reason I can do that is because our students understand the expectations as well as our staff, and everyone's on the same page. And what I'm able to do is go out and see what's happening. And we've got some great teaching happening in these classrooms. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to take the state assessment. I really am. I know by the time we get there, our kids are going to be in great shape because they're in the classrooms asking questions, helping each other, asking the teacher for help when they don't understand, because they don't feel like that's a bad thing. They've been, for the last 3 years, they've understood this is just the way we do things here. And so it's allowed all of our administrators here to be seen as support units, and instead of evaluators all the time, which is a really hard obstacle to overcome. It's a huge compliment when a teacher says, "Hey, I'm doing something totally new today in my room that I'm a little scared about. Can you come watch and give me some feedback?" That wouldn't have happened 2 years ago here. It happens at least once every other week now. And that's super exciting for me. So I'll just admit the fourth one on here, relationships is the expectation and the norm in this building now. And it just works hand in hand with everything else we're trying to do. And so the looking ahead, things we want to do, we're able to look a lot more now at the academic side of things and really hone in on some of that. But we're making sure that we keep what we've got going, and expanding that. We asked our transportation director, "Hey, can you get transportation to come to the middle school next year for the PD, for their PD day, and just budget us in 30 minutes so we can talk to them about some of the things that we need to happen?" Because I've got 14 office referrals so far this year, and 10 of them are off the bus. So, I mean, we're looking at that saying, hey, things in the school are happening the way they need to be happening, but either our drivers aren't doing this, using the same language and holding students to the same level as what we have going on in the building, or else our students need to be reminded that those rules apply to them. But we need them to make sure to feel like they're on the same page. And that group of people sometimes feel like they're alienated from the school. We want to make sure that they know they're part of our team too. I think my last slide just says, do you all have questions for me? I'll gladly take them. or suggestions. Like I said, I'm a fourth year administrator. I don't even pretend to have all the answers. I still ask a lot of questions, and some people have a lot better ideas than I do. I'll be glad to take them. So.
All right, well, just know if you do have any questions, please speak up and ask. But David, great job. And I do appreciate you sharing because, you know, we all know that relationship building is the key to any success, I think. And when you can spend the time and effort on that, you're going to reap the benefits, and you're seeing that now. And so I'm just happy for what's happening there at your school, and just keep us posted on new things as we go throughout the year as well. So I do appreciate you sharing with us, and you did an awesome job, and I appreciate it. So, all right, so we're gonna transition. Last group that I want to have an opportunity for you to hear from today is from our STAR grant. So, Scott, I'll just turn it over to you and let you share what supports and opportunities you can provide for them as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this this group. I've been so impressed just listening to all of the presentations, and a little bit about myself. I know a lot of people that's on the call, but some that I don't know. So I was an elementary principal, and then a middle school principal. And then the last 12 years, I was superintendent of school systems. So, but even in saying that, the role of the principal has changed so much over the last few years that I have so much respect for everyone that's on this call, and the job you do is just it's just so difficult, and I really appreciate what you do for our kids. So a little bit about the STAR grant and the way it came about here at GREC. So most of you may know that your district, so GREC has 45 districts that's a part of our co-op, and those districts pay membership fees to be a part of GREC, but along with that, they're able to be a part of what we call our grant consortium. So what we've ran into a little bit with the STAR grant when we talk to safe school coordinators or principals or superintendents is, you know, they might say something like, well, we didn't write that grant. And so what happened was GREC wrote the grant over a year ago now. And if your district was part of the grant consortium, you were automatically included into the STAR grant. So STAR stands for School Threat Assessment and Anonymous Reporting. And it basically is a two-part, it's twofold. One is for us to listen to you and help you and provide any kind of professional development in the area of school safety, and bring that to GREC so that you guys and your staff and your faculty may not have to drive to Louisville or Lexington or a place that requires more mileage and time away from their family. But we could bring those people to GREC, and you guys could participate here. And then the second part of it is to conduct a site visit at each of the schools that's a part of GREC. So for us, it's right around 350 schools that's in the GREC region. So I work with a gentleman by the name of Brad Stevenson. Brad's actually sitting in my office now listening to the call, but Brad's retired Kentucky State Police and also worked at South Warren and for Warren County schools in the last few years. So he brings both perspectives to what we look for in the site visits. And then just a few weeks ago, Mr. Leon Smith has come on board to help us do some of our site visits. Some of you may know Leon. He was the former superintendent at Russellville. So what we do is we've begun our visits for this year. We've been to over 50 schools in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And we want to be another set of eyes for your faculty and your staff and for the principals. So we'll come in and look at, walk through your school, look at everything we can look at. We work closely with Ben Wilcox and his people from the State Security Marshal's office. But keep in mind, we're just a resource and we want to help you. So anything that comes up that you want to talk to us about, or you see that's trending, or you have a concern, we just ask that you reach out to us so that Greg can help you and make sure you stay in compliance for when Ben and his deputies show up. So all the visits have been great. The principal's been great to work with. And when we come to your school, if you can walk through the building with us, that's great. I know you're busy and you got a lot of things going on, but we'll walk through and look at everything, look at your safe school plan, look at your locking door procedures and things like that. And then we've got just a few questions on the assessment tool that we'll talk to principals about when it's over. So I'm thankful for the STAR grant. I think it's a great thing. And the main thing I just want to reiterate is we're just here to help schools. Any kind of resource we can be, we want to try to help. So I'm going to put my email and Brad's email in the chat. And we look forward to, if we haven't been to your schools, I know some of the schools we have been to already, but if we haven't been there, we'll be there in the next few weeks and months, and look forward to seeing you. And if something comes up in the area of school safety, please reach out to us here at GRAC, and we'll be glad to do everything that we can do to make sure that you have the safest environment possible. But again, thank you for the job you do. Thank you, Kelly, for this great network. I really enjoyed it, and I'll put all the information in the chat. I am going to put a workshop that's coming up the end of October. Dr. Peter Langman is going to be here at GRAC. He is a national expert on identifying school shooters and avoiding school shootings. I think it's going to be really exciting. I know it's going to be powerful, but I'm going to put his information in the chat as well. And if you're interested in that, we hope you can break away and come to GRAC for that. It's October 28th, and I'll share all that info in the chat as well. But thanks again, Kelly. That's all I have. I know we're running short on time, and I want principals to have time to talk as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate you hopping on and sharing some support with the principals as well, because I think it takes a teamwork to make sure that we continue moving in the right direction. So I appreciate that. I just want to add, I threw this slide in there because on the Google form, one of the things that principals were talking about was being able to cover staff due to COVID, not having enough substitutes. And so I had just talked with several different people and just wanted to share some thoughts with you. So I talked with Rob Akers. He previously worked with EPSB, but now he is working. He's in the School of Leadership and Professional Studies at Western Kentucky University. And he said to share with you that, you are able to apply to employ emergency non-certified subs. And, he said, this is probably not the most ideal thing to do, but it does give you a better option or some additional options to be able to have subs in your building to keep from having to, pull teachers and administrators to cover those classes. So that was one idea. He also shared that some schools have developed some new SBDM policies around protocols for teacher coverage and being able to pay some stipends for teachers if they are, using their planning periods to cover classes. So it's always nice, if you can provide some type of an incentive, if that's the way that you're going to need to cover classes. And then also, if you can just hire a permanent sub just to have in your building, which that's not always feasible, but that's a great way to handle that as well. So I just wanted to give you those. I wanted to provide those ideas with you, and just to make sure that you have a few ideas. You can always reach out with any other questions. You can email me directly if you have something pop up and you just need some additional support around it. I will say on this slide, you'll see when our network meeting dates are. I will share out this slide deck. And so those registration links are already ready if you want to register for those. But no, I'll be sending that out along as well throughout the year. Just wanted you to make sure you have those on your calendar. And so I'm going to stop sharing. All right. I'm just going to come back in for a little bit here and just, I just really want to open it up. If you have any additional questions that you would just like to ask the others that are on the meeting today, like I said, this is your time. All right. So I'm not here to talk at you. I'm just here to try to bring the people here that can support you and provide you with what your needs are. So if you have any questions that you would just like to ask the group, feel free. How are you handling this, or what are you finding here? So I'm just gonna give you the opportunity to ask anything you would like. And while we're having a little discussion time here, I'll also drop the Google form, our registration and Google form in the chat. I will tell you one thing about that, and then I will stop talking. I will email your certificate to you because we had a little glitch in getting that linked. And so just know once you fill that out, then I will follow up and send you your email. So I do want to, open it up. If anybody has any questions, thoughts.
Kelly, one thing I want to jump in and mention real quick, there were some changes that were recently made through EPSB that allow people who want to pursue a teaching certificate, if they've had difficulty passing the first praxis to get into the program, they have eased those requirements. And so I don't know if you mentioned that earlier. I had to get off here for just a little while, but did you mention that?
No.
Okay, I did. Sorry, I didn't want to double back, but if you're interested, if you've got someone in your building who is maybe they're serving as a classified position because they were not able to pursue teacher certification, please reach out to me and I'll send you more information about that. They've also changed the guidelines on the option 6, option 7 as well. So again, if you've got somebody who's maybe interested in that, please just reach out to me and I can share those changes with you. And Kelly Bart's jumped on here. He may want to pop in here and just, I don't know if he wants to say hello, but he asked me to send me the link. And send him the link a few minutes ago. So
Yes, Bart, jump
Bart,
right
Bart.
in.
Just hello and thank you all, and just keep doing what you're doing. It's there's a lot of challenges on a lot of folks right now, but principals are, I mean, you can make a case the teacher are having hardest or superintendents are having the hardest, but principals are trying to lead that school every day, and being an instructional leader in a COVID world it's just it's super challenging. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. We just keep saying that. That's going to be a new theme for us at Greg. I'm sure Kelly has said it already, but we had Linda Tyree. Did you talk about Linda's presentation, Kelly?
I did not. We had Shirley and Bratcher,
Awesome.
and she did some SEL and self-care today, but I have not talked about Linda's yet. So go right ahead.
Well, I think her and Shirley probably did that together, but the 6 types of resilience, they presented that at KASA. And we are going to start to do that in some schools for faculties. So if you think, hey, I've got a faculty meeting coming up and I would really love to have 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes of someone doing the 6 types of resiliencies that are out there, Linda and Sherlyn focus on, you can tell me, remember them, y'all. We did this in our staff meeting yesterday, but we had physical, psychological, social. The last one is spiritual. I'm trying to remember all 6 of them, but it was just it's a real quick hitter of the 6 types of resiliencies and making sure that you're trying to do some work in each of those. Sometimes we'll say, well, I do exercise regularly. Or sometimes you say, well, I do have like, some moments of quiet in the morning, some meditation regularly, but trying to get multiple ones of those together just to help you continue to lead. Eventually we're going to come up with a better analogy than the oxygen mask analogy, because I feel like that's been overused, but right now it's still the one that's in my brain, which is, you got to put the oxygen mask on you first before you take care of, in this case, your kids, which are now your teachers. I know some of them are older than you, but that's what you got to think of it as, it's like your teachers are like your kids in your building, and you got to take care of your kiddos. But if you don't take care of yourself first, you get sick, hurt, tired, burnout, agitated, all those things, and you can't lead like you want to lead. And just the fact that you're on here this morning, committing your time, tells me that you do want to lead in the best way possible. And we'll just continue to try to be here to help you do that. So if you want help on that kind of presentation idea, feel free to reach out for Kelly, and we'll see what, I don't want to commit Linda or Sherlyn, but we'll see what we can do.
Definitely. And I also want to tag on that and say, if your district might be interested in youth mental health first aid training for your school, for your staff, reach out to us, because we do have some additional funding available to be able to provide that training for some of our districts at no cost. So, if you happen to be interested in that, please reach out as well. We definitely are just here to try to provide you with all of the support, that you need to, just to have the most successful year that you can have. So I don't want to hold you on here any further. I think we're at a good stopping place. I do appreciate everybody that's been on here and has shared in any way. But like I said, and like everyone else from Greg has said, if you need any support at all, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And we do thank you for the work that you're doing, and just you're doing a phenomenal job leading your schools in such a trying time. So kudos to you. Thanks for joining us today. I will share out your ELA certificate. I will share out your the slides with all the information, so you can go back and review that. And hopefully you gain something from today that's going to help you moving forward. So if you have anything, jump on and say it. If not, have a great rest of your day. And thanks for giving us a little bit of your time this morning.